Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Ponterato. I'm the PR specialist here at Docler Holding, and welcome to our fourth monthly Docler Tech Talk. Before we get started, I'll give you some rules with how we are going to do the presentation. Just for starters, this is the UX design presentation, and our title is UX is for Losers. How the questionnaire will go is throughout the presentation, you can just put your questions and your thoughts within the chat box that you will see on YouTube. And at several moments during the talk, I'll check out my phone and I'll make sure that Federico and Avi can answer the questions. So before we get right into the talk, I think some introductions are necessary. So Federico, maybe you can start us off.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having us. Hi all, I'm Federico. I'm UX expert at Docler Holding. And I'm more or less 20 years in the field and did several roles and work with different companies, startups, and help them set up the UX practices. And in my free time, by the way, I prefer talk about that. Sometimes I'm just doing some cooking, do-it-yourself work, and going around with my motorbike whenever I can.
Thanks, Federico. And Avi?
Oh yeah, so hi everybody. My name's Avi. I'm the experience advisory lead for Devoteam. And so my role pretty much encompasses to be the evangelist, the ambassador for all topics experience, design, UX, CX. And I've been doing this for about 12 years now. So definitely, Federico, I do appreciate how long you've been in the field. And I don't know, personally, I've been recently going a little bit more on the nature side. A few interesting travels, going to places I'd never think. Cooking has been, I'm a person who loves to, be a Luxembourger, be diverse, speak all the languages and run around. That's my bread and butter.
Sure. And speaking of diversity, I think, with the title that we chose for this talk is pretty diverse compared to a normal, presentation for a topic in UX. And Federico, I think you were the one who, you had this good suggestion for it.
Yeah, I like it because it's a bit provocative too. Obviously, it can be read in different ways. It will be interesting to know what people thought about it. So please tell us in the chat. That might be interesting to see how it was interpreted. One side obviously might be seeing as that is not a good thing to have UX in practice, but in reality is exactly the opposite. So it can be seen, and that was the game on this title, and the play with it is there are companies who are set up for losing because they are not being able to succeed or reach their objectives or be generate proper outcome, and that's why they are losing. And so UX might help them. So that's why UX is for loser. So it might help them instead of succeed, instead of losing opportunities and doing a better work and product in the end.
Interesting. Yeah, because we were talking before a little bit about it, and UX design, it's not something that at least personally as someone who's not known so much about it, it doesn't seem like it's something that there's so much focus for in many companies, regardless of what the company does.
I mean, definitely, like if you think about it, I love the approach of how you say UX is for losers. I mean, it's not about we're experts, we're losers, we can walk out. No, definitely not. It's definitely that, UX has its own viability in all projects, an ecosystem of not just the digital world and within companies, as you said. I mean, it's also in common day practices. You go to the restaurant, you go to the shop, you're going to have a conversation about, how's your day, or can I get this bun over there, or this croissant, or you're going to go through your menu. He's going to memorize your menu and serve your wine at the right time. Or even if you go into a shopping mall, you see someone's having a rough day, a rough time with their, caddy, and you're there to help them. And I find that all these aspects are part of the experience ecosystem. And user experience, today it's a buzzword, but there's, more to it. You have customer experience. People are talking about human experience. They're bringing, a bigger envelope to what is defined as experience, as all these interactions, digital and non-digital, in all forms of space.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually interesting. There's a lot of situation that we can mutuate from the reality, as Avi was saying. The way that we experience any moment of our life, it's important to understand what UX impact might have. It's I do a lot of examples normally using the real life and retails or the restaurants as well, because it's important to understand that the little moments during your journey with the service or anything are counting, and they are building up on your final opinion and how you decide if that is valid or valuable for you. So it's important to not forget about these little moments. They seems maybe not important in the overall picture, but in the end are the one who build the foundations of a great UX.
Yeah, I mean, like, and talking about foundations, I feel that, you know, today in the culture, it's definitely a big part of being onboarded into digital projects. And I think that experience as a whole, a lot of people think how we got into it. Maybe that's a good topic to dive into, you know. I can say that from personal experience, you know, I started as a graphic and web designer into marketing and esports, and unconsciously you're doing a lot of user experience topics, you know, how you write your marketing material, how you're exchanging across different e-commerce platforms, how you're going to communicate with your teams and, you know, your employees, etc. These are all interactions that really matter. And then, you know, when you move forward, and I'd say probably 10, 12 years ago, when UX was slowly becoming more of a mainstream term and becoming more of a profile and not just a hidden designer job, I find that at that point, you know, you truly realize that UX, such as other methodologies in terms of implementing a research model, whether it's agile or management or leadership, also has a methodical framework which you can put into place, and it's not just common sense. And I find that that's an image a lot of people do have about it. You know, common sense, that we're just making decisions based off experience. We've worked with mobile applications, we've worked in companies, we know how politically, how strategically everything works, and that's it. But actually it's truly data driven. It's truly about facts and a lot of empathy alongside that. And the psychological aspect along together with data and facts, I think is something really really key to proper understanding what experience is. What do you think? Like, how did you start? Where did you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I have the similar path. Well, my path is a little bit different in the start because I was starting with theater and cinema, so totally different things. But in the end, it turns out to be not so disconnected with what I'm doing today. Because after doing theater and cinema and studying those, I was also, I started working in graphic designs, and then I teach myself about web, coding, front end, all those stuff. That I learned, so I was able to actually have a pretty good understanding of how also the technical side was built, and that helps me a lot into understanding how a proper UX should build, taking into consideration all the aspects, not only the human factor but also the technical side of it, how they might match and to generate a proper profitable solution. But research was always key on it because, and that's why I connected with the theater and cinema, because in theater you do a lot of preparations for being able then to perform in the end.
Right.
And your performance depends on the preparations and repetitions that you do before, and the research that you do to build up your character, etc. And the type of methodology that you use for doing that, it's not far from what is used in user experience design and user research, because they are similar. They are motivated from anthropology and psychology. So they are really near. It's like building a persona for a user experience project. You need to build up a lot of different pieces of information to be able to give a sense of whole, and be able then to understand how that character and UX, the persona, think and act.
Sure. So would you guys say then it's more to like get started into UX and like pursue a career or a huge passion for it outside of your career? Would it be best to focus more on like the human aspect, or like you were mentioning the data aspect as well? Or is it like, how would someone do it? Or should it be like a mix of both?
I mean, I'll take this one at the beginning.
Yeah, please.
So I find that, first of all, we haven't actually taken the opportunity to really define what is user experience, right? I mean, everyone's going to have their own, you know, definition, whether it's inspired by design thinking or whether it's how we interact with our products and with our services. I think the word interaction is very important here because it's about social interactions, technical interactions, and also all these aspects of creating a product and service that simply delivers a more pleasure and of higher quality and more, that really ticks that happy meter we have inside ourselves. And when you talk about going into it as a field, when you're doing, let's say, a degree or studies or whatnot, I find that, it's still very young. It's still, people can think that it's based off freelance experience, being dived right in as a designer. A lot of people do evolve from a designer into UX. But I think that two aspects which are very key are understanding certain levels of empathy and psychological human behavior, because that's going to help you better evaluate your audience. And understanding your audience is a key aspect of experience because you dive right into it and you can see that, okay, I'm building a product not for one person, not for a manager, not for a whole team, but for maybe 10,000 people, 100,000 people. And certain within this category, there'll be those people who have decision power and who will have, influence. But there is no purpose to building a product that's just going to be, shelved or, delivered to a certain audience without actually understanding that, you want to think about the future life of this project and not just think of it as a project, but more as a product and, how things can evolve. So psychological human behavior is important and depends. The rest is, the UX is very large.
Yeah, exactly. I do agree. UX is extremely large. Compared with the past, so when I started out, let's not say again that it's too much time, but it was totally different. It was also simpler somehow because despite the infancy of the industry at the time and the particular role that a lot of was still in definition and methodology as well, the situation was different because the technology was simpler. There were no mobile application. There were just websites and emails. So you were just pretty easy understanding how those type of media work. But then it became in the time a little bit more complex. That's why research is even more important than before, because now it's touched a lot of different type of media. You have mobile application, you have a smartwatch, you have Internet of Things, you have virtual reality, augmented reality. So now it's really broad. So there's no, I think, like in the past, the possibility to really be able to work in all these aspects and all these and be knowledgeable and prepared for all. So you need to be more specialized. And so this comes to your question, how someone can prepare himself. For sure, something that doesn't change is how people minds work. So this is pretty much stable in history. It's an evolutionary thing. So it's we react and our emotions are always the same. So and the way we behave are really always the same. So we need to learn how these apply to these new situations, but it's key to have this background in psychology and behavior and to really understand the mental models of the people. So we can really find a way to speak with them through our products, through the interactions.
Right.
So a good foundations in research, despite someone will be work on that specific verticals rather than doing something else in the UX ecosystem, I think it's key.
I mean, like it's also so true when we speak about the whole factor that you apply UX in smart homes, in artificial intelligence, at the restaurants, as we spoke about. It also created all these new jobs. And the role of a UX designer, for instance, within a digital company, within a startup, within a management, banking, finance industry, or even within innovation, it's totally different. And within UX, you also have this model of different jobs. We've spoken a lot about research. You have researchers, you have designers. That's what everyone knows us as. Glorified UI designers who are there to build mock-ups and prototypes, which is a definite important part of the job. But it's really the ultimate finale, the deliverable. And we will iterate upon that. But then something that I'd love to talk about is writing. I think you're a bit into literature, correct?
Right,
Yeah. So you have something called UX writing.
Okay.
And when I first heard that, I think that was still probably 7 years ago, maybe even a bit more. And you don't realize how important of a job that is. It comes a bit from journalism, how you're putting words onto marketing material, how you're writing articles to capture attention, how you're going to send out that human resource email to be like, please, don't spill coffee on the floor, or at least clean up after yourselves, right? The point is, this aspect of writing is just one example, and UX has 10, 20, hundreds of new jobs that have been created in the past, not even 5 years, and they're different for every field. And then, we can call ourselves unicorns, but that's just being arrogant and saying we're the best at everything. The whole point is, we're maybe experts in a particular field or multiple fields, but it's an evolving trend that has to, go with every year's new technological advances, as well as trends of human and social behavior that is influenced by media and influenced by our today's events. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that's correct. Unicorns was, I think, was more a thing of the past, just because it was less complex. So that's Now it's really difficult, and it's important to have people who can understand the entire complexity of a project, of the figures, and the skills that you need to have in a project. So it's important to have knowledge and be able to fill the gap sometimes whenever you don't have the number of resources necessary to participate in that project. But it's really important to understand what you are really good at and specialize in that, because it's where your contribution will be bigger and important, so you will help the project to move on. So all these new roles are actually nothing than evolution of what was already there, because copywriting was already a thing. It's just that they understood what was important, what if we apply to the writing, like it's for the novelists, etc., the psychological aspect, the behavioral knowledge that we have about the user, how they understand what we are saying, and then shape it in the writing in the proper way. That's actually, it's becoming also one of the most important roles in a project, because in the end, words is what communicate the most and are clear because it's written. It's not like an image might be interpreted like arts or other things. It might be ambiguous sometimes, but a written word, it should not.
Right, it's clear and direct when it comes to words. So, but I think I want to go back to one point that you mentioned about designers, and it kind of goes with what we're speaking about right now. Can anyone be a designer?
Ah, good, interesting. Okay, this is a
interesting question.
This is a returning topic. There was an article, I think, by Jared Spoon, but everyone is a designer, and somehow it's correct, because it's not that, partially correct, because it's true. Everyone can contribute to the UX of a project, and so they have an impact, because marketing, finance, developers, everyone has his own responsibility to contribute to the final UX of the project, and the decisions that they made have an impact on that. But you need specific skills and knowledge to apply in order to navigate through the complexity of the design thinking. That now it's terminology that
I think that's going to be our next topic. I have a feeling.
Sorry. So it's really true that you need people who are prepared to navigate the complexity and then can connect the dots. So it's also about what the roles a designer have in a project, that not only about that everyone can contribute in a design. So in the end, for me, it's not 100% true that everyone is a designer. Everyone can sense the design, or can have an understanding of the design, and can have a small part of it, but it needs more preparation, more specific preparation to be considered a designer.
Yeah, like when you look at it, like, a designer, right? So by definition, a designer can be considered an architect, someone who draws an art. By default, that's what you think, right? And today, more and more people understand that a designer could be building websites, mobile applications, and other things of the similar sort. A designer can also simply be, a facilitator, right? So they're the person who are going to be, orchestrating conversations between different teams, different managers, simple friends. He could be a designer of creating an ambience and an atmosphere amongst them. And so sure, everyone can be a designer. Everyone just needs to choose what's right for them, and we all have our individual talents and paths, and we exploit them to our best ability. So I think it's more like, you once you find that niche within which you're good, and I think because we're going to be focused on UX, within UX, once you find that niche that makes you say, okay, I'm truly amazing at prototyping, or I love doing workshops, I love talking personally. You know, that's what I enjoy doing, teaching, coaching. So I enjoy doing that workshop part of the actual work. But then when it comes to aesthetics and design, I know that they're more qualified people. There might be someone better than me. You know, I might be better for a certain type of product, but they might be better across the board. And that's where ridiculous collaboration between such folk is so important. And giving other people the ability to showcase their strengths. And, you know, everyone in companies today has that one person who has to be the UX guy, the designer, and the also person who does all the marketing material. But tomorrow you need to understand that, you know, not everyone is going to be able to play to those strengths. And it's rare. You know, they don't not exist, but it's just rare. And yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's not even correct that it exists. I mean,
Finding that absolutely perfect human being in the field is, you know, it's a dream, right? You aspire to be, but it's not feasible always.
I agree, and I agree with the fact that the designer is a facilitator. It's actually more and more often the one who should be able to connect the different people and involve them in the projects, because what happens a lot of time is that you have team who works on something and they are separated and everyone is doing his own things, and maybe they're working on the same things that they don't know, or they are trying to achieve the same result without knowing, while a designer might be able to speak with all of them and involve them in the conversations in a way that actually can connect all these dots and help them align and be able to. So design as a facilitator, I think, is the most correct definition of what the current design role should be in a company.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely I think that's important. So you said something, you said design thinking.
Oops.
Oh, you know, design thinking. I'll take my first shot at that. You know, I find it's...
let's hear it, yeah.
What?
I said let's hear it, yeah.
Let's hear it, yeah, let's go for it. So design thinking, what is design thinking? I mean, it's, you know, I have a strong feeling about design thinking. I don't say that it's incorrect, it's a bad approach. I mean, it's definitely brilliant. Those who, I recently actually was doing a training about product ownership, and they showed me how teams were working in the 80s and the 90s. And that was absolutely brilliant. And they implemented design thinking principles. So I'll let you define what it actually means, because I feel like you're more experienced in that. But my take on design thinking is that you cannot use it as a justification for everything. And that it is simply what you need to do to deliver good work, good foundations, good methodical frameworks, applying them into agile teams, applying them into, you know, design work, and understanding that design thinking, being design oriented and focusing on research to build better design is key. And just saying today that your design thinking is like saying that, you know, you're a media agency but you're a UX expert, or that, you know, I'm a developer but suddenly I'm a full stack architect, right? You cannot glorify things, and work and performance shows for itself. And I think I respect that absolutely, right? It's a foundation of everything, performance and work and learning. You know, you never, people always say you never actually lose. Either you win or you learn. So, I mean, what is design thinking for you? How do you like it? Do you think it's the best way to describe our field?
Well, no. Sorry, I went straight to the
you know,
to the answer. No, I mean, design thinking is a great thing. What I mean is, it was created with a reason. So, and it's a great reasons to be able to connect people that are not designers, and to be able to involve them in the process of design. So to be able to then have a designer who is used to this type of approach and way of thinking, to be able to work together with business people and developers and others that doesn't really understand how the design mindset is, and have them going through a path together to reach a common goal. Then it got a lot of misunderstanding in the meantime, because everything that became a buzzword and everything, so and everyone started using it, and then it just changed a bit in the understanding of the people what that is. And so I think it's no more, we need to clarify what is really useful for. It's not that you need just to apply design thinking anywhere you want and magically everything goes
to plan. It's going to be amazing.
And it's important to know what it is about, but you need an expert person on the team who can actually navigate with you, who is the captain. So that's the designer role. So someone who actually knows what what should happen and when, and can guide the thoughts of the people who are not usual to that approach towards what might be the final outcome. So it's not something that you just plug and play and okay,
That's
we
go-
are
it's going
done.
to
Everyone
work.
can do it. We don't need designers. We don't need things. So you just need design thinking as a framework, and that's that. So it's a bit more complicated than that.
I mean,
So-
I must say, like, something I like to maybe counter when it comes to topics such as that is, like, you know, what you could call a UX designer is a glorified business analyst. But in a sense that where they have these aesthetic talents or psychological talents, but that, you know, can be also interpreted, maybe you have a different interpretation, but I find that actually might even be a better definition than trying to apply pure design principles to what a UX designer is. Because as a business analyst, you know, your job is obviously to cater and gather feedback, intel from people who are involved in the business application of whatever you're trying to build. You know, whether you're in a bank or whether you're in a restaurant, you want to talk to the staff, you want to talk to the cook, you want to talk to the person also separating the bill, or you want to talk to people who actually use your product instead of just the developers. Now, your job is also to interact with these people and understand them, build stories, have interviews and focus groups, and these are great examples of exercises that collect data and can give you what you need to better understand your audience and build greater products. So I think that we are more in line with business analysts, while obviously having a whole nother layer of skills, you know, alternatively, whether it comes to presenting documentation, pitching, or drawing and being artsy. You know, all these little aspects are definitely other skills. I mean, I think that maybe I have like an interesting take on this. If I something we have an ecosystem called the creative tech. So I think like maybe we can even show it on the screen. I think that for the creative tech, it's our example of what we call a little tech studio, a tech team, and it's built with, you know, business and product people, designers, data-driven technology and data-driven facts, as well as collaborative, multidisciplinary teams and talents. So it all sounds like big fancy words, but the whole point is it's a excellent continuity of like an ecosystem of a team that works. Because you have business talking to designers, you have designers collaborating with developers, and you have tech and data supporting all of this, and everyone is polyvalent. And you know, this can be applied not in digital teams, this can be applied across any field, right? So you have to have people of different roles collaborating and being active with one another.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, and this is a tech team in a tech studio. I'm sure they have it within your company. I'm sure you've seen it even out in the streets. You know, sport teams, they work in the same way as well. I mean, what do you think? Like, what is a good ecosystem for a UX person within a company?
Well, I think you described it pretty well. There can be several different setups, but are not different than what you described. So what I mean is that you have the need to have different people involved in the process, because each one has specific knowledge and skills that needs to be there and contribute while you're moving on. So it's not that one have all the knowledge and the other needs to follow that lead. It's just that you need to. The key is always collaborations, because you will never know. I mean, that specific angle that you're looking at something might be not the right one. So you might be even the UX on the team and having the knowledge or having the technical part involved that is pushing in one direction, but maybe that direction will unlock other doors. You say that will lead to a better and optimal solutions in the end that we were not thinking in the first place. So that's why it's important to have different people on the team that have these different positions and let's say they can contribute to the overall outcome in a way that is more balanced also. So not going too much towards the business or too much on the tech side. So
absolutely, yeah.
Also, so I think that's the ecosystem that you showed. It's pretty common nowadays in a lot of companies who want to actually start working in a better way.
I mean, definitely. Like, and you're saying companies who want to start working in a better way, right? And I think we were talking prior to giving the talk. We were saying that, you know, there are companies that have applied such an ecosystem. It's common. It's good for digital transformation, especially in tech companies. But what about, you know, looking at Luxembourg to abroad, right? And there are some companies who have a UX first mindset, being progressive and thinking forward, and absolutely having such an ecosystem that works for them, where they are very collaborative and very product oriented and go to market and things like that. And then the same entity abroad, you know, is 10 steps ahead, or vice versa. And I think that, you know, Luxembourg is a very interesting country, that we have a lot of companies that have this mindset, and some still are growing and getting there. You know, I don't need to say that people are slow or fast, because that doesn't make sense. Everyone's going at a pace that functions within their own, you know, risk wallet. What do you think? Like, what do you think about its use case in Luxembourg? And I don't know, you had much more experience in the field, let's say, than myself. You know, 20 years. I've only been in 12. What have you seen in your life that made you maybe see like UX is great here, UX is not here yet?
Well, it's always a back and forth. I will say that in my experience, there were never ideal situations all the time. So it's really always a back and forth towards different stages and moments. It's when we talk about UX maturity of a company, or UX first approach, or design oriented, depends. There's a lot of different way of naming the same things. I think that it's really rare to reach that level of being really UX first oriented, and to keep it. So you might be able, and that's really a rich moment when you'll be able to achieve that. It might happen maybe in one project only, and it might be successful, but you might not be able, for different lot of reasons, to reapply that. And so that's why I said there's a lot of back and forth. So you need to also be resilient. That now it's a terminology that a lot of people loves, and you need to be there and insist and continue to work on, try to keep that momentum and to keep that level, and to rebuild for that continually each day. So there's no one company that can say it's always UX first.
Of course not. Yeah.
That's something that we need to say. So don't I don't want people or other designers or people in other companies being frustrated because we are so far, we will never reach that moment. So no one is reaching that moment and keeping that forever. So
no, it's impossible. And you see today, you know, like, it's imagine in any kind of factory line or in any kind of work, like, you know, people say that, for instance, there's a certain level of disciplinary actions you expect in factories, in schools, raising your hand, or how the conveyor belt works. All these things, you know, they have to have a certain rhythm, a certain pace, and how they keep going forward. But it has to be, you know, very strict, disciplinary, and efficient. And sometimes, instead of overshooting, undershooting, they try and, you know, make sure to reach a production level that works. And it's very applicable to what you said. Like, for UX, it's a continuous cycle. Like, you apply it at the beginning of projects. You can apply it during projects. You can apply it at the end of projects, right? If you're transforming your restaurant, if you're transforming your home, it's a project as well. And at each step, there's going to be different elements of user experience, of customer experience, of how you're experiencing the whole factor, and what you can prove and reiterate. So it's very continuous, and it's very flexible. And I think that's something people maybe don't know too much about today, is that, you know, they think that UX is we impose, you know, we conquer. No.
Yeah,
you know.
no, I agree. I mean, in my coaching session, normally I always say that, so, okay, it's pretty cool that what you're studying, the books that you're reading, everything is perfect there. And the framework that they describe, and that's awesome. But in reality, that's not exactly how it happens. So it's good to know those. It's good things to learn exactly how it should be, and master that, because then with that knowledge you're able to be to cherry pick and know what you might be using in that specific project, what might be effective in that moment. In the overall framework, you might not be able to go from A to B, or to C to D in that order, but you maybe say, okay, maybe I can do A and then I can do D. I cannot do the others because I don't have the time, I don't have the possibility or the resources or whatever. So being able to know what to apply when, it's really important.
Absolutely.
And also being able to understand when it makes no sense at all. There are moments where you just don't go through that path. It's also less productive to go that, because maybe it's just simpler to apply the knowledge that you already have, or some standards that already exist. There are some knowledge that you don't that are based on years of research and studies that you don't reinvent each time. You don't need to go through that all the time.
So on that note, like, would, you know, so let's say you are doing something, a project for a client, and they disagree, or even actually, let's say someone within, let's say, your company disagrees with what you're doing for the specific project. Now, how do you go about that? Like knowing that what you're doing for the client is, correct, and how do you know that, that you're reaching the client's expectations, that you're reaching what they are actually looking for with this project, what they are expecting from you to deliver? Like, how do you go about like managing the tasks for different clients?
Well, yeah, I mean, the disagreement, it always happens, so it's normal. It's part of each relationship, even in your family. And so I think that we need to learn to deal with that. And there are several ways. It really depends on the situations. But let's say as a generic rule, you normally try to you do your best always, and you try to do the right things based on the information that you have. And if you don't have, you should be able to try to find and build the most large set of informations and knowledge that you can have, and insights that you can use to back up your work and your pitch for solutions. In the end, you might still have some disagreement and someone who asks for something different. And if you are in a less powerful position, let's say, or you are not able to sell what you want, the good thing is to say yes. There's a technique that you use in workshop. It's yes and it's say yes, and so you will do that, and you will do something else also to test and to show that maybe that version was better. So with data and with other informations that you might collect. Does it mean that you will be able still to keep your solutions ahead? Maybe not, but you did your work. So that's how you should deal with the situation. That's my point of that.
I mean, like I have a very funky story. I think I told you at some point about this story, and so it was one of my aha moments in this exact scenario. So I had a client, I think 2016, 2017, and we were in this boardroom. We were discussing about a product, and there was this senior manager level, head of director, head of department there, and his voice is respected, and he had that commanding persona, which is good, great. You need that within some companies. But I also felt that people were afraid amongst my colleagues, my boss, or my team leaders, or everyone who was there, that they were afraid to challenge his opinion. And I think that as a being in the field of UX design, challenging and understanding that it is your role to bring advisory and actually provide an argument with data, driven with data, and this wonderful technique of yes and is very key, and it's a skill you must have. And people think, no, you need to be a talker, you need to be extrovert to have this. Not at all. Introverts, extroverts, regardless of your personality type, you can still, be proud and also be understanding and present your argument in a proper way. So in this moment, there's it's like having a discussion. For instance, I like a pink button on the top right. No, I actually want it on the bottom left, or I want these boxes in this particular way. And in fact, you should be like, when you look at your audience, how they're using the product and their key complaints, or let's say quick wins, which you could apply, would be to put it in this format. And instead of feeling that, okay, he's going to come down on me, I'm going to leave this client, this company, I'm never coming back, it was my best confidence building moments, because he listened, he understood, and that's why I was there. I was hired to provide an expertise. The way I described it, the problematic is very simplified. But I think this is an everyday skill everyone needs to have, and a mindset that it's not about fighting, it's not about winning. It's about which way would be more efficient for the targeted audience. And if you're incorrect, if I'm wrong, be the first to admit it, but then work together to find a solution that works. And it's all about mindset and how you go into that.
Yeah, I agree. There are moments where I recall even in my past where I had similar situations, and it's important to understand that sometimes you're just, it's not about winning, as you said, you're just planting a seed. And maybe that seed, if you did your work correctly, takes its time to maturate and to grow, etc. But at some point it might come back. It happens to me in a lot of cases that I was doing my job, I was doing that things, I was doing it properly with all the information, still didn't went through. But it came after 1 year, after 2 years, and say, okay, we should do this. Yeah, we did.
I showed it to you. Can't
it-
help it.
No, I'm not saying it's saying to you, but it's okay. Yes, sure, and it was already done. So because you did your job properly. So or the yes and moment. I had a fight. I remember one time in a startup with the CEO because I was promoting a solutions, and he says, no, I want this one, and I was starting this debating and said, but why? I mean, can you explain me why you need this? Because there might be something that I'm not aware of, some different type of reason why it happens, and this is also something that we need to take in considerations.
Yeah.
That there might be some reasons that they cannot be, we cannot be informed about that are why they are requesting something specific, and that might really be important too. We need to accept that, and so what happens to me is that I accepted in the end his solutions, even if I didn't like it, but I built something on top of that that he didn't ask for, but it was a winning situations, and so he was happy because I said, yeah, this is what I want you to do this. So so in the end, it's really important to understand, to accept sometimes and build on top of other solutions if we cannot do differently.
Of course. And, you know, we have this mindset, the client is always right, this and that. You know, it's not good or bad, but at the end of the day, we are there to provide and give them a solution or a platform or a study, or provide them the framework to apply change, apply training, apply adoption of user experience and customer experience across the chain. So you're asking for our help. We want to collaborate, right? And if you're right, or if you have a better mindset, or if you don't want to provide us all the information, our collaboration will still be there, but limited. And I think this is maybe an interesting segue, just if I can briefly talk about like all the exercises, I think, that are part of the UX scope, right? So we can show it also to the audience. There's a whole story of exercises you can apply in this framework, in this foundation of what you should do within a company. And personally, within my teams, within my customers, we always like to say, what's a quick win? What's a quick foundation of what you can do? Not be like, you know, yes, you want your business, you want to get on board, but more to show them through our work, how can you achieve quick results and build upon that, and understand that if you need to dive deeper, we are there to accompany you, or you can do it yourselves and we can show you how. So for instance, on this screen you have, I think, workshops and design and UI. You know, it's the bread and butter in my personal opinion, and I think it can also definitely be improved, but it's the bread and butter as a starter pack of doing workshops, doing focus groups, understanding customer journey maps. How do you feel at the beginning today, and what do you want to achieve tomorrow, and how do we draw it? And based on a persona and an audience. And design and UI is, you know, it goes to different levels, you know, black and white sketches, prototypes, interactive prototypes with high quality and corporate branding. And then you mentioned something amazing before, that yes and about showing one item and testing another and then seeing which one's better. That's a great example of A and B testing, right? So you have two different audiences or the same audience, and you want to show them two different alternatives of a page or product, a button, or you want to interact with your customers at a coffee shop or a restaurant differently on the same evening as someone else and see what worked better over 2 evenings. And that, for instance, is an absolute fantastic way. And I think, like, if the audience has any questions concerning any other exercises or other things we can exercise, I can definitely talk about that. But I find that showing that UX has so many different possible exercises, workshops, functionalities, budgets. It's got a whole vocabulary of things to do, and not one person can do everything. You know, going back to the beginning, not one person can do everything, which is why today you see teams. You see these ecosystems of various roles and responsibilities coming into play, because it helps to be multidisciplinary, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
And sorry, I want to segue very quickly to some of the questions that we have.
Sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it actually goes along a little bit with this. Arcady, he asked, so is it better, in your opinions, when you have a project to hire like an external service that can act as the UX experts, or would it be better to have something in-house?
The most used answer in UX is it depends.
Yeah, sadly, yes.
The reason is simple. So it depends on the project and how big it is, how you are capable to have this person in-house, and how skilled this person might be, if it's able to cover all the needs of that roles or for that project. So it might happen maybe that you have someone who can take over or some part of it, maybe in the beginning and middle, and you should focus and to understand if you need really to cover all the other aspects of the process, of the methodology, etc. If you cannot have it in-house because there's no skills in-house, then you can go outside and see. Sometimes you just go outside because of capacity, so you are already busy, and so you cannot take also that project even if in-house you have someone. Other times it might be that you just go outside because you need an external perspective, because the internal team is always working from internal, so it knows sometimes too much about the project, so it cannot really take the step out that UX should be from the user perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
And be able and not have bias about it because it knows too much. So the external person might have a different total understanding of it because it's not focused on that. So it's like the first time users. So it might bring something really new and important in terms of knowledge and discovery in the discovery phase, especially in the analysis, that you might be needed.
And what about, like, let's say it's a startup company and they're beginning their first projects. Would it be better then for them to say, well, we need a UX designer, we need a UX expert, or when they begin, should they look outwards for people who are already working and already provide this service to other companies? Like,
I mean, I'll give like an opposite take then, just to challenge you a little bit, maybe it doesn't depend. Maybe actually, in cases like that, getting the external advice, because as a startup, you don't always have those kind of funds to invest in internal profiles, and you don't know how long you'll need them, realistically, right? So instead of always living in a dream world that, we can hire everybody and move forward, be pragmatic. We could use the help from people who are, high-level experts in the field. They can come, show us, maybe teach us a framework, maybe build a tech studio or team, and then they can go away again, but at least they've taught us something, and sure, you pay for a service, but the point is your ROI on that, socially, product-wise within the company, and also your growth is stimulated at a much higher level. But then obviously on the other hand, if you feel that being UX first in a startup from the get-go, which is important for fintech startups, for all these ecological product startups, doesn't matter, but how you engage your customers over social media, these are marketing roles, but they're enhanced by CX, they're enhanced by UX. So maybe this could be a role to invest in. I lied, I still have to say it depends. But on the other hand, I think that you need to look at it from a perspective of what can I achieve in 2 days, in 5 days, and what do I project in, over larger longest of time, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Startup life cycles are very small. They tend to be, right? So how can I have quick wins, and what will give my product longevity?
Okay, interesting. All right, maybe we can go back to the. I know we segued a bit, but
no, absolutely not. I mean, I think we can see like what else is on the line. We have so many interesting topics to go on.
Sure. Yeah, it was.
You put Federico and I in a room, we probably wouldn't leave for like until the next day.
But I think we should go into the slide that we have here.
Oh, definitely. So we can talk about something called something I use is user experience at the workplace. What I show on the screen. Is that for each of these 6 categories of pictures, you can see little like notions and notes on every single picture. Whether we talk about a coffee corner or a kitchen all in one, a meeting room where some people are being interactive, some people are on a laptop, some people are like, why am I here? Parking where like, look at today, I came to this building and I was slightly disoriented and I had to call Christopher. But he was able to help me, and how are you guided within a building, one entrance, one exit, where do I park? There's no signs. Or a meeting room where it's super interactive, or like working in nature. Today, recently I built a terrace in where I live, and we're sitting outside in the sun, and we can still have a remote work environment, but feel that we're enjoying fresh air. It's so much different and stimulating for the brain in a different way. And last but not least, talking about UX, for instance, at a restaurant, how is it sitting on the sofa, being intimate, or at a long table talking with someone? And maybe I'll challenge you on 1 or 2 of these, but I find that in each of these examples, UX is present in a different form, in a different way. So for instance, in a meeting room, what have you experienced? What do you think is effective? How do you think UX is applied in meeting rooms and companies, and what's good, what's bad, and what do you think could be interesting?
Okay, if I understood correctly, you want to know what a meeting room might be.
Like put yourself
as an ambient.
Yeah, as an ambiance, right? So like an interesting maybe description would be in Scandinavia they have a culture of standing meetings, right?
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons why meetings sometimes are boring is that everyone is sitting.
There you go.
That's why normally that's why I like workshop rather than meetings. And workshop normally I try to have people to be active, because if you're active you contribute, and you don't isolate, so you have more energy in the room. So I think it's important to have spaces that are more traditional if you want, because you need that moment where but an example for me, it's really sad within a meeting room there's no whiteboard, because
That's very sad
one
sometimes.
one of the first
It's like,
things
where
that
can I draw?
yeah, it's one of the first things that I do. So when I sit down and someone starts speaking, I tend to jump in and go to the whiteboard immediately and start taking notes, sketching, and summarize, and try to ask people to come and contribute. So this is how you keep a motivations valid, I think, and high on a meeting. So usually if you're people who are participating and not sitting, then you have more interesting meetings. Otherwise, you will have always a lot of silent people, or people that are not even knowledgeable about what the meeting is about.
I mean, for sure.
I think there's no a single unique receipt for that, because there are some extremes. There are people who do also the physical.
The ones lying down. I think I've
yeah.
seen pictures on LinkedIn where you have
Yeah.
like push-up meetings, right?
Yeah, the push-up meeting.
And
yeah.
then like, you know, you at some point
To keep it short.
you're done. At some point you're done. It's like, 3 push-ups, 10 push-ups, I'm done. I'm out of here.
You know, they are nice experiment to keep it short, but
Yeah, of course. No, it wasn't push-ups. It was planks. That was it. Plank meetings. Planks. Yeah, like standing on your elbows, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
imagine that?
Probably a 30-second meeting.
3 minutes you're out. 3 minutes is tough, but you're out.
It's lucky, yeah.
So I think they're nice experiment. I don't know if there's one single way of doing. I like a lot. I think, but I'm Italian, so I like a lot the informal environment. So I like I like the meeting at the bar or the dinner where anyone is more relaxed and willing to share more. But that's cultural also.
Of course. I mean, it's a culture obviously applicable to I mean, like, I think, like, you know, stereotyping is unfortunately, you know, human behavior, which we unfortunately are doing subconsciously all the time. And it's us to responsibilize ourselves to look at everyone, you know, not as genders or particularly something else or where they come from, but instead, you know, as simply human beings on planet Earth, and, you know, we live, we prosper, and we move on, and that's it. You know, in the most simplest way to look at things, that might be it. But, you know, everyone has their own approach to it. But I think that when you were talking about, you know, cultural and meetings, good examples are, for instance, here in Luxembourg, it's you have an image of, you know, pure capitalism, corporate. But then, you know, people don't realize there's an entire startup ecosystem here, supported by the government, and it's absolutely fantastic. You know, some companies in some countries in Europe, Holland, I don't mind saying this, Holland is on the forefront of e-commerce. You know, London is very, you know, diverse. Luxembourg is very diverse. You know, Asia is known for being academic, innovative, same as America, same as, you know, the Arabian countries. Like, all of these aspects, the whole world has contributed at different levels, culturally appropriate. And they're adapting, and they're trying to, you know, use these international imposed frameworks and going forward, keep moving forward, which is great. But, you know, I think something that someone told me very importantly was, for instance, you know, in a Chinese culture, it's very common that when you meet people, you have to give them a gift, right? In Indian culture or in some Southern European cultures, they are very accommodating. You know, you're welcomed the person as if you've known them for 20 years in your home, and they will, you know, feed you and they will provide you entertainment. And it's different, right? And so in those aspects, when you're dealing with business, digital, and projects, and you're working with these people, having these factors is key. I mean, I'm definitely, I'm born and brought up in Luxembourg. I speak a few languages, and without that, I don't think I'd ever be able to touch and understand all these different people at different levels than if I was, you know, coming here with a different experience. But that would also be, you know, alternative. You're from Italy. You must have seen how life is there, how life is here. It's also interesting for you.
Yeah, totally. And we can go back here to the research and knowledge and mental models and, and behavior, because this is key to be. This type of knowledge is important because especially if you work in an international environment, and if you have, even here in Docler, we are 30 different nationalities, so at different cultures, different people, the way you interact, it's different. The understanding of what you're saying is different from a different point of view, and this has an impact on the product as well.
Yeah.
And if you have a product that is used worldwide or translated and needs to work in different countries, you need to be aware what you are doing, what type of understanding will have on the other sides. So if it's meeting with the cultural habits and mental models that they have, colors are one of the examples that have different meaning in different places. But so it's really an important key factor to consider.
Okay. Yeah, we're running out of some time, but we do have some more questions that
Let's
you guys
dive
don't
in.
mind. There's one gentleman, Saba. He asked, in 5 to 10 years, where do you see UX design in companies?
It's a tough one.
5 to 10, where?
Ah.
Which place in Earth?
But what
That's
difference
right.
would it make? What would you say?
No, it's because as we
Go
said
for it.
before, I mean, the maturity level is different in different places. It depends how much you're exposed to this way of work, of this knowledge, etc. So it might be that in some area your positions in a different moment of the journey, so it might be more or less advanced. In 5 to 10 years, what I think is that maybe there will not be any more a UX designer role, but everyone will be, I mean, it will be part of everyone's role. So it's it's already happening somehow. And so it won't be anymore something that we discuss like this as a separate type of topic, but it will be naturally integrated at each and any level. So that is what I see. I see some trends already happening. I see happening conversations that I have daily in my working life, and I think that might be the final destinations. I don't know if really in 5 or 10 years.
I mean, if
obviously,
you
but
put it like that, you know, I hopefully we won't be out of a job in like a while.
no.
I think
I will be in pension. I hope.
Well, you've been 10 years. Come on, you're still young. No, I find that in 5 and 10 years, user experience. I think what you said was something that was really key. It's going to be implemented into everyone's mindset, into corporate and company mindsets. I think that's going to be great. But going forward, you know, that a UX designer has so many new skills and techniques to evolve. And what I said before, it's always in line with the current year, the following year, and how news trends are being recycled. You know, we're still living in the 20s in 2021. We still have some things that are coming back in fashion, in media, in business. And UX is also going to have a similar role. One thing I hope, though, that in 10 years never ever happens again is companies trying to enforce people to design first. You know, just make the website and we'll do it later. And little do they realize, I mean, like in Devoteam, I've had a few of these funny occasions, and then you realize, like, if I design first, and you tell me to go back 20 times, wouldn't it just be better if I spent maybe a little time understanding how your business works, how your product works, do this research, and then I'll design the most beautiful product you need. But if you give me that time to understand you better, and what you said, fresh eyes coming in you as an external, I think it's amazing. And I've had that first-hand experience, and I find that new user experience and UI designers and UX experts and UI designers are coming into this field. For them, it's great to understand who you're working with and how your team is working and the product from a fresh perspective and what can you do to actually make it better and why, notably why.
I see.
Do you have another question, I think?
Yeah, I think it will be a question for both of you too. Like, what advice would you have for someone who is starting out in UX or UI, or someone who wants to start out? Like, what should they expect, pretty much?
I'm taking a pause here.
Yeah.
Perfect for the shot.
It's what they should expect. Fun. At least for me, that's funny. If you like to really learn how to really do the UX and learn about how people behave, etc. If you like science, because never forget that UX has a lot of science in it. It's not just creativity. It's more science than creativity. If you like that type of things, it will be funny. You need to expect also a lot of frustrations and pushback, and so you need to be strong because you will face a lot of limitations and a lot of moments where you feel like you are not really contributing or achieving something. It's not true. It just maybe take a bit more time and still believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of good takes in that, definitely. And plus, you know, being the senior here, I will always listen to this kind of advice. And I think that if I would have to give an additional part to that, is if you're going to be, for instance, a consultant or work for in a consulting environment, or you're going to be working for one product, one service, try and do things in parallel and acquire a skill of working on multiple things in parallel. As a consultant, try juggling multiple projects, because that's how you're going to be inspired, constantly creative, and be able to be better on all of these clients. And if you're working on one project and you don't have that ability, you're long-term at some company or at one particular client, still within that team, challenge yourself to maybe influence some other teams or learn from other products and try and bring new and fresh ideas into what you're working on. Because the last thing you need as a designer, in the generic way of the terms, is a monotonous review of the constant same thing. Because without that, no inspiration, no innovation, and you yourself won't feel challenged, and you'll get burnt out. You know, and that's true, I think.
Yeah, we can summarize with be brave.
Be brave. Take challenge. You know, we can put that on the cup.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, definitely, like, understanding that's not going to be easy. Be realistic. You know, that's what you mentioned. Be realistic. You will be asked to design.
Yeah.
You will be asked to take on new challenges, and that's okay. But don't step down, and most importantly, juggle new things at the same time, because that will, you know, give you creative juices, the kickstart it needs.
Sure.
And don't have fear to share and to show. Show up and share.
Show and tell. Kindergarten. Show and tell.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Federico, and thank you, Avi, for speaking today about UX design. It was very interesting to hear both sides of, you know, your experiences, but also how you see different aspects of UX and UI. Clearly from this, like, there's so many ways to look at it, but there are some central themes. You know, as you mentioned, having both the science, the data, these kinds of parts of your learning, but also the human aspect. You know, we went into the psychological, if you're, you know, at a cafe, or if you're at, you know, in the parking lot, as you mentioned earlier. So it's all of these little things that, you know, as someone who isn't in UX or UI, we don't really consider at all for experts to pay attention to. But nope, it was great to hear this. So thank you again.
Thank you for having us, and
Thank
wonderful getting to know you. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was amazing moments. It was really funny. I like it.
Yeah, it was good.
Great. Yeah. All right. Well, everyone watching at home or at your desks, thank you again for tuning in. We'll have our next Tech Talk next month. Stay tuned to hear about the theme that we have chosen and to hear about the speakers for next time. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.